जय राधा गोपीनाथ श्री राधे। जय प्रभुपदा 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 जय गुरुदेवा 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 जय गुरुदेवा। जय नित्य लीला प्रविष्टो विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र शत श्री श्रीमद्भाय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय नित्य लीला प्रविष्टो विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र शत श्री श्रीमद्भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय गौड़िया गुरु वर्ग की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। So reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 24. Tadashmasaram hridayam batedam. Tadashmasaram hridayam batedam. Yadgrihyamanair harinamadheyahi. Yadgrihyamanair harinamadheyahi. Na vikriye tatha yada vikaro. Na vikriye tatha yada vikaro. Netre jalam gatra ruheshu harshaha. Netre jalam gatra ruheshu harshaha. Tadashmasaram hridayam batedam. Tadashmasaram hridayam batedam. Yadgrihyamanair harinamadheyahi. Yadgrihyamanair harinamadheyahi. Na vikriye tatha yada vikaro. Na vikriye tatha yada vikaro. Netre jalam gatra ruheshu harshaha. Netre jalam gatra ruheshu harshaha. Tadashmasaram hridayam batedam. Tadashmasaram hridayam batedam. Yadgrihyamanair harinamadheyahi. Yadgrihyamanair harinamadheyahi. Na vikriye tatha yada vikaro. Na vikriye tatha yada vikaro. Netre jalam gatra ruheshu harshaha. Netre jalam gatra ruheshu harshaha. Tadashmasaram hridayam batedam. Yadgrihyamanair harinamadheyahi. Na vikriye tatha yada vikaro. Netre jalam gatra ruheshu harshaha. Tadashmasaram hridayam batedam. Yadgrihyamanair harinamadheyahi. Na vikriyetath yada vikaro netre jalangatra ruheshu harshaha. Word for word. Tat, that. Ashmasaram is steel-framed. Hridayam, heart. Bata idam, certainly that. Yat, which. Grihyamanaihi, in spite of chanting. Harinama, the holy name of the Lord. Dhyayahi, by concentration of the mind. Na, does not. Vikriyeta, change. Atha, thus. Yada, when. Vikaraha, reaction. Netre, in the eyes. Jalam, tears. Gatra ruheshu, at the pores. Harshaha, eruptions of ecstasy. Translation. Certainly that heart is steel-framed which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes, and the hairs stand on end. Purport. We should note with profit that in the first 3 chapters of the 2nd canto, a gradual process of development of devotional service is being presented. In the first chapter, the first step in devotional service for God consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting has been stressed, and a gross conception of the personality of Godhead in his universal form for the beginners is recommended. By such a gross conception of God through the material manifestations of his energy, one is enabled to spiritualize the mind and the senses and gradually concentrate the mind upon Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, who is present as a supersoul in every heart and everywhere, in every atom of the material universe. The system of Pancha Upasana, recommending 5 mental attitudes for the common man, is also enacted for this purpose, namely gradual development, worship of the superior that may be in the form of fire, electricity, the sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and at last, the impersonal supersoul, the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. They are all nicely described in the 2nd chapter. But in the 3rd chapter, further development is prescribed after one has actually reached the stage of Vishnu worship, or pure devotional service, and the mature stage of Vishnu worship is suggested herein relation to the change of heart. The whole process of spiritual culture is aimed at changing the heart of the living being in the matter of his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord as subordinate servant, which is his eternal constitutional position. So, with the progress of devotional service, the reaction of change in the heart is exhibited by gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment, by a false sense of lording it over the world, and an increase in the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Vidhi bhakti, or regulated devotional service by the limbs of the body, namely the eyes, the ears, the nose, the hands, and the legs, as already explained herein before, is now stressed herein in relation to the mind, which is the impetus for all activities of the limbs of the body. It is expected by all means that by discharging regulated devotional service one must manifest the change of heart. If there is no such change, the heart must be considered steel-framed, for it is not melted even when there is chanting of the holy name of the Lord. We must always remember that hearing and chanting are the basic principles of discharging devotional duties, and if they are properly performed, there will follow the reactional ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body. These are natural consequences and are the preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage, which occurs before one reaches the perfectional stage of prema, love of Godhead. If the reaction does not take place, even after continuous hearing and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, it may be considered to be due to offenses only. That is the opinion of the Sandarbha. In the beginning of chanting of the holy name of the Lord, if the devotee has not been very careful about evading the 10 kinds of offenses at the feet of the holy name, certainly the reaction of feelings of separation will not be visible by tears in the eyes and standing of the hair on end. The bhava stage is manifested by 8 transcendental symptoms, namely inertness, perspiration, standing of hairs on end, failing in the voice, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and finally trance. The Nectar of Devotion, a summary study of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, explains those symptoms and vividly describes other transcendental developments, both in steady and accelerating manifestations. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has very critically discussed all these bhava displays in connection with some unscrupulous neophytes imitating the above symptoms for a cheap appreciation. Not only Vishwanath Chakravarti, but also Srila Rupa Goswami treated them very critically. Sometimes all the 8 above symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by the mundane devotees, prakrita sahajiyas, but the pseudo-symptoms are at once detected when one sees the pseudo-devotee addicted to so many forbidden things. Even though decorated with the signs of a devotee, a person addicted to smoking, drinking, or illegitimate sex with women cannot have all the above-mentioned ecstatic symptoms. But it is seen that sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated, and for this reason Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti accuses the imitators of being stone-hearted men. They are sometimes even affected by the reflection of such transcendental symptoms. Yet, if they still do not give up the forbidden habits, then they are hopeless cases for transcendental realization. When Lord Chaitanya met Srila Ramananda Rai of Kavaur on the bank of the Godavari, the Lord developed all these symptoms, but because of the presence of some non-devotee brahmanas who were attendants of the Rai, the Lord suppressed these symptoms. So sometimes they are not visible, even in the body of the first-class devotee for certain circumstantial reasons. Therefore, real, steady bhava is definitely displayed in the matter of cessation of material desires, kshanti, utilization of every moment in transcendental loving service of the Lord, avyartha kalatvam, eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly, namagane sadaruchi, attraction for living in the land of the Lord, pritistad vasati sthale, complete detachment from material happiness, virakti, and pridelessness, mana shunyata. One who has developed all these transcendental qualities is really possessed of the bhava stage, as distinguished from the stone-hearted imitator or mundane devotee. The whole process can be summarized as follows. The advanced devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord in a perfectly offenseless manner is friendly to everyone, can actually relish the transcendental taste of glorifying the Lord. And the result of such realization is reflected in the cessation of all material desires, etc., as mentioned above. The neophytes, due to their being in the lower stage of devotional service, are invariably envious, so much so that they invent their own ways and means of devotional regulations without following the acharyas. As such, even if they make a show of constantly chanting the holy name of the Lord, they cannot relish the transcendental use of the holy name. Therefore, the show of tears in eyes, trembling, perspiration, or unconsciousness, etc., is condemned. They can, however, get in touch with a pure devotee of the Lord and rectify their bad habits. Otherwise, they shall continue to be stone-hearted and unfit for any treatment. A complete progressive march on the return path home, back to Godhead, will depend on the instructions of the revealed scriptures directed by a realized devotee. In translation again, certainly that heart is steel-framed which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and hairs stand on end. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Shwantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Goratvashe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we read a very nectarian purport. I mean, every purport is nectarian. And it is commenting upon a text which is the conclusion of Shaunak Rishi's commentary in his asking Sutta Dev to speak on more Krishna Katha. So we've heard a long exposition of really famous and wonderful admonitions and condemnations of the body that is not engaged in the hearing and speaking of Krishna Katha and devotional service. Eyes, like the eyes on the feathers of a peacock. Such poetic descriptions as this. And concluding his elaboration, his comments, we find here the comment going within. We've finished hearing the various faults of the body, and now we are hearing that of the mind. And what is that fault? It is that heart which is still framed, which in spite of chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and hairs stand on end. It is the unchanged heart, the internal reality which is not affected. It is the reduction of internal spiritual ideals into external empty movements. And one may ask, in hearing this, why Shaunak Rishi has gone on such a long description. We generally hear in Vedic society that, well, not just in Vedic society, it is the proper etiquette. It is not that of a conversation. It is not that of the modern so-called spiritual or truth seeker who will dabble around and listen to this person and listen to that person and take what is good and think himself such great an authority that he may pick and choose what he feels fit, or that he may contribute something to the person he hears, that he thinks he can go to some person he recognizes as an expert and then says, oh, well, I will give them some of my ideas as well. I'll help them out a bit too. This is not the Vedic standard of etiquette or the Vedic conception of truth. Truth comes pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. It comes through submission, not through a leveling of the playing field. It comes in a parampara, a descent of links, not through a two-way street. It is a one-way direction of mercy. And of course, Shaunak Rishi is a great devotee. So what is going on here? Well, Srila Prabhupada seems to give some indication. He says in the first chapter, the first step in devotional service for God consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting has been stressed, and a gross conception of the personality of Godhead in his universal form for the beginners is recommended. These are preliminary matters that are being discussed. These are topics that are, while important to hear and while very essential, of course, there is not a single word in Bhagavatam that is not an infinite ocean of nectar. They are still not cutting to the chase, so to speak. And Shonak right here is not speaking in order to contribute to Sutta Goswami, in order to tell him here's a few points you missed, or to show off, or to in any way suspend his role as a disciple hearing the narration of Bhagavatam, but instead he is saying it to say, look, to show I have some understanding, please, I am so eager to hear the essential topics, please speak those ones. I am aware of the conclusion of all these preliminary discussions. And that is not necessarily inappropriate. Srila Prabhupada himself would sometimes listen to the classes of his disciples, not with the intent that maybe his disciples were to necessarily, because of, back then, all that existed were Srila Prabhupada's books. So by definition, every single thing that they would be saying was something that Srila Prabhupada himself had written only quite recently. But instead, it would be it was considered a nice practice in order to hear how they had processed and understood the philosophy. And so, sometimes maybe it can be fine for a disciple to speak to the guru or the teacher in order to demonstrate that, yes, I have understood these topics. And by demonstrating that, Shonaka Rishi is showing his eligibility to hear higher topics. We hear in Bhagavad Gita that it is that this message is not to be preached to anyone. There are people unfit to hear the message of Bhagavad Gita. And hearing the discussion, the mention of the offenses to the holy name, we know that it is an offense to preach to people who have no faith. Faithless people, the preaching of the glories of the holy name is an offense to do so. So Shonak is showing that there is no offense in preaching to me. This is another dimension to what he is saying here. So it is not that he is giving a class, that he sort of switched the role and taken the role of the guru to his, in that assumption, disciple sutta. No. He is still continuing the discourse within Vedic etiquette. I'm reminded of a rather humorous pastime of His Holiness Radhanath Swami, who was giving a wonderful class on Ram Leela, I believe. Either way. And someone in the audience at the end raised his hand and asked a question. And for maybe 10-15 minutes, he drew out in his whole question a narration of the pastimes of Lord Ramchandra and its implications, and then bringing out those implications, he finally came to a question which he then asked for over a minute in order to word it together. And His Holiness Radhanath Swami just put his hands together and said, "Thank you, Prabhu, for giving Srimad Bhagavatam class. Does anyone have any questions to ask?" So I'm reminded of that. Of course, that's not to condemn that devotee, but that was done jokingly by His Holiness Radhanath Swami. But such a mood, if His Holiness Radhanath Swami was serious, is not considered appropriate. And here we see, however, that Shonaka Rishi has not fallen into that. And such development, such gradual progression to higher topics is necessary. This purification going through various conceptions we see is stressed all throughout the Vedic corpus. Even Bhagavatam itself is purificatory in its 9 cantos leading up to the 10th canto. And why is that so? We see here in this purport the condemnation of those who rush in to such topics, the Prakrita Sahajiyas. Srila Gaur Das Babaji had a rather interesting pastime in this regard. He obviously, as we know, Gaur Das Babaji was very well revered as an avadhut. His behaviors were erratic and the symptom of a devotee, of a Paramahamsa devotee on the highest platform, which are very hard to understand. And with the great name that he had received as a great devotee, there were many envious people who sought to imitate him and do other things. And there was well, of course, they are not devotees, they are Vaishnavas, they are cheap imitators. And he, this one man, he established a hut very similar to Gaur Kishore Das Babaji's residence, very close to him. And he behaved in a similar way. We know Gaur Kishore Das Babaji once took an eggplant, a raw eggplant, and offered it as bhoga and sprinkled some Ganga jol, some water from the Ganga, on as seasoning, and then ate it raw. He would sometimes miss his bathing, and of course he would, in order to avoid the attention of mundane people, he would hide in the toilets, and so many other things that maybe are beyond our sphere of comprehension. And so this person did the same, and he was doing and, hoping for the admiration of the local devotees, and hopefully to build a following. And Gaur Kishore Das Babaji in general, being aloof from such things, avoided him and avoided any comments. But once, while passing, he saw him and he said, simply by entering the labor room, and simply by entering the maternity ward, to use more modern language, a young girl does not become pregnant. There are so many things that must come before. In the same way, one cannot just jump into the Paramahamsa platform beyond the Vidhi. Srila Prabhupada mentions here that this is a description of Vidhi Bhakti, and the following the rules and regulations which purify one before reaching the platform of such elevated things, and especially here the conceptions of Raganuga Bhakti. These things need to occur. This purification, these steps before entering into the labor room in which one's spiritual form is born, and in which the qualification to hear such higher topics is generated. Many things must come before, and so merely by entering the labor room one cannot give birth. Many things must come before. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur has a similar comment. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji were very intimate devotees. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur would say that those people who wish to run up and get the fruit of the 10th canto nectar, or the nectar of the higher, not even of the 10th canto, but of the devotional sentiments, who feel that they can immediately jump in to having Krishna Prem. How can they? Because the fruits of the tree are held at the top. One must climb the tree before they can taste fruits. What sort of fruits are available at the bottom of a tree? All the sweet fruits are at the top. And therefore they must climb the tree of sadhana bhakti, of Vaidhi sadhana, and then Raganuga sadhana, and then before they can even taste bhava sadhana, and then finally have that bhava fruit blossom into full prem. His Grace Madhavananda Prabhu, when he taught nectar of instruction, Bhakti Shastri, often said this. We see sometimes that new devotees will join and enamored by descriptions of Ashtakalya Leela and Krishna Prem and Raganuga Bhakti and Siddha Pranali and their Siddha Deha, enamored and encaptured by their conception of these things, they run off. But really, the devotee should be learning Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam. And then Atyahara Prayasascha Prajalpanya Magraha, and then Utsahan, and so on and so forth, before even contemplating such things. He would use the example that Bhakta Bob is, after coming into contact with the Sankirtan movement 2 weeks ago, is now in Radhakund reciting the Radha Sahasranam. He has memorized maybe the Radha Sahasranam, but has he memorized the Upadeshamrita? Has he heard Dhruva Maharaj Katha thousands of times? Has he heard Prahlad Maharaj Katha thousands of times before even hearing the first word of such high and elevated pastimes? It is not so cheap, and yet people, so famously it is said, fools rush in where angels dare to tread. These are areas which Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when hearing Ras Leela being narrated, would leave the room sometimes and say, I'm not qualified to hear such things. Some certain disciples of Srila Prabhupada would go around asking some godbrothers of Srila Prabhupada and some Babajis and so on and so forth about these esoteric details, and I still remember hearing of one of Srila Prabhupada's very senior godbrothers who was known as a scholar in all Shastras. He was asked about about Ujjvala Nilamani. Ujjvala Nilamani is the sequel, so as to speak, of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. However, it focuses entirely on the Madhurya Rasa, on these very intimate pastimes relating to that exchange of that certain loving exchange. And when asked a question, he said, I have never read Ujjvala Nilamani, because Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur instructed us never to read it. So, if such elevated Vaishnavas were removing such things from the sadhana and from the reading prescription, it is a bit rash for fools to rush in again where angels very much have dared to tread. Because of course we read in Chaitanya Charitamrita that the creeper of devotion, once planted and once grows, it does not blossom directly into Goloka Vrindavan. First, it pierces all the layers of the material universe. One must know what is the nature of this material universe. Who am I not before who I am? And going through these many layers, then it crosses over the Viraj river, it crosses over the Brahma Jyoti, it crosses over all through the Vaikuntha planets, and then finally it blossoms in Goloka Vrindavan. It does not skip around, it does not teleport, it passes through all these conceptions. The journey in Brihad Bhagavatamrita is maybe not one we physically have to undergo, but it is a philosophical one of purification that is very, very pertinent to us. So then, these sahajiya, these prakrita sahajiyas, they reduce, however, such things in a desire for name and fame. And the sahajiyas, they're an interesting group. There is the sahajiya tendency, which is of course the tendency to take things cheaply. But the term Prakrit Sahajiya refers to a specific sect that developed throughout, actually before even the bhakti movements. The Prakrita Sahajiyas, the word Sahaja is a Sanskrit word, and it actually appears in Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya Charitamrita in a neutral context. Saha means with. You know, Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Saha is with. And Ja is the root form of the word meaning birth. So, Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam, the appearance and works which are transcendental of me, Janma. So, Ja. So, Sahaja, that which is born with, or the more fluid translation, the natural means of something. And that nature in Bhagavad Gita is used to refer to the material nature. However, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the natural love of the gopis is described as being sahaja to them. It is inherent to their spiritual nature. So the word itself seems to be neutral. However, in the for the Prakrit Sahajiyas, they take this in a very negative usage. Of course, they don't see it as negative, and they instead say, well, this sahaja, the material elements with which we are born with, these are equivalent to the bodies of Nityananda Prabhu and Krishna. Because if Krishna's foot was pierced by an arrow, then it was material. And if Nityananda Prabhu, if he bled when at the attack of Jagai and Madhai, then he too must be material. Such nonsense blasphemies these people would speak. And their history is rather interesting. As I said, they predate actually the Bhakti movement or the Sankirtan. Even the Sankirtan, forget Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Madhavendra Puri and all these others, they predate them. They're actually, in Buddhism, there are three general wings which are described. There's they're described in yanas, vessels. So there is Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. These are all terminologies that the Mahayana and Vajrayana schools prefer to use. The Hinayanas will prefer to refer to them as Theravada, but it works out cuter if you can refer to all of them as yanas. Because Hinayana means the small vessel, Mahayana means the great vessel, and Vajrayana refers to it refers to a Vajra. So the Hinayana or the Theravads, they are popular in Thailand, Sri Lanka, so on and so forth. And they're very strict. They will only read the Pali Canon, which are the oldest recorded teachings of Gautama Buddha, at least according to Buddhist parampara or Buddhist Shastra. The Mahayanas take a much larger view, and they have various texts. The Lotus Sutra is one of the most famous, and they have a slightly different view. They somewhat have more elaborate cosmologies. I don't want to get into the various forms of Buddhism. You can make various points of difference between their meditation styles and also their whole philosophy. The Hinayana, they're called a small vessel because they believe the goal of each individual person's life is nirvana. However, the Mahayana call themselves the great vessel because more people will be liberated, because they believe just before the point of nirvana, actually a pure a follower of Buddha does not achieve liberation and holds on to a tiny bit of ahankar, and then teaches as many people as possible so that they also can be on that platform of a tiny bit of ahankar, and then everyone's ahankar can be evaporated and everyone goes away. But actually, both of these schools are not relevant to the discussion of the history of the Sahajiyas. Actually, it is from the Vajrayana school. The Vajrayana school takes most of its influences from the Mahayana school. However, and this is the school of Tibetan Buddhism, this is the Dalai Lama, although Vajrayana does exist in Japan and to a small extent China, but it's mainly Tibetan Buddhism. And it had a strong tantric influence. So it is sometimes referred to not as Vajrayana Buddhism, but as Tantric Buddhism. So these Tantric Vajrayana Buddhists went on, and they were influenced by many ideas. And one group of them, which were the Sahajiyas, or the Sahajayana, to keep with the Yana theme, the Sahajayanas, they said, well, actually, all of these meditations and all, they're nonsense. We don't need scriptures. They're all a sign of arrogance. People are so arrogantly making such a big deal of, ooh, I have self-control, so on and so forth. But, so what they said, but actually the feminine and the masculine, these concepts, when united together, they represent completeness. And so by the sexual union of masculine and feminine on a mundane platform, we can experience some form of nirvana. This is how we can experience it. And so they came up with this bogus idea, complete sense gratification under the name of so-called religion. But this developed in the Bengal area, and when Vaishnavism began to take control in Bengal, they said, oh, we like this, and so they instead said, oh, so this masculine element, this is Krishna, and this feminine element, this is what they call Radha. So blasphemous, so revolting is the teachings of the historical Prakrita Sahajiyas. So they say, therefore, I am Krishna, this woman that I am engaging in illicit affairs with, my tantric partner, she is Radha, and together our union is Goloka. This is their blasphemy. This is why So strongly these things are condemned. This is the result. This is the result of such mundane material mindsets. And actually, this reflects their underlying atheistic Buddhism. Because if when one is atheistic, they will have to reduce the Supreme Lord to a mere person. And so they reduce it to mere material factors. As I said before, Nityananda Prabhu bled, Krishna was shot in the foot, and therefore they have a material body like you or me. And so they engage in so many illicit things in the name of such things, and then they attempted to infiltrate or influence the movement of Mahaprabhu. Attracted as they were to the success he was having, they hijacked it very nonsensely. So this is the historical Prakrita Sahajiya, but any tendency which takes cheaply these higher topics is a tendency leaning towards their conclusions and their notions, and therefore must be so strongly condemned. And condemned it was. And this was the main preaching work of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said actually meditations on one's spiritual form, these higher topics, should not be performed before one is even at the platform of Ashakti. He speaks, he correlates the Shikshashtakam to the Ravindra Sarup Prabhu did a fantastic seminar on this, correlating the various parts of the Shikshashtakam to the various stages from Shraddha to Prem, outlining how each verse of the Shikshashtakam correlates to each of the 9 different stages. And Ashakti correlates to the Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram verse. And he says, because Ashakti correlates here, this is the first time we start to hear proper positive descriptions of our spiritual identity. He makes the inference and makes a strong and very shastrically verifiable teaching that one should only begin meditation on such higher things when one has reached the platform of Ashakti, which is very, very far away from most of us. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he also rejected this. He, as was tradition, and it is not a bogus practice, the Siddha Pranali system. At the time of initiation, many Babajis would give a thing called Ekadasha Bhav, which are 11 features of one's Siddha Deha, one's body in the spiritual world. And they would say, so this is your name, this is whose tutelage you are under, this is the type of clothes you wear, this is your age, this is the specific service you have in Golok Vrindavan, this is the people whose mentorship you're under, so on and so forth. They would say all these details and they would write them down. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did away with this. He did not practice this. Bhaktivinoda Thakur did, so we can't say it's fully bogus. It does come from Dhyana Chandra Goswami, who got it from Gopal Guru Goswami, who got it from Mahaprabhu, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur seems to have no real debate with this. However, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said this is mainly being abused. It's being given by people who they themselves, forget about knowing their Siddha Deha, have not even controlled their senses. And it is not found in any of the writings of 6 Goswamis or anything else. If we read Chaitanya Charitamrita or any of the other canonical shastras, we will not find mention of this process. So it is not essential, even if it isn't necessarily entirely unbona fide, although in almost 100% of the cases where it is practiced today, it is practiced in an unbona fide manner. Instead, he gave because at the time of initiation, you would get those 11, and then you would also be given a name of all of the previous Diksha Gurus and their forms as well. So-and-so Manjari, so-and-so Manjari. Instead, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave a parampara, the Bhagavat parampara, composed of the succession of Shiksha, the succession of the speaking of Srimad Bhagavatam. Because that is the essence. One can try to fake a ritual, a lineage where people are repeating mantras and then saying the form. Such a mantra is a mantra of such a parampara is a parampara of externalities only. It is a parampara of bodies. It may convey the essence, but it also cannot. You can trick people with externalities. You cannot trick them with the essence, at least not in the long run. So this essence, and the actual essence, the essential point of what initiation, of what the guru-disciple relationship is that passing down of the Bhagavatam, of the teachings of Bhagavatam, from one person Bhagavat creating another person Bhagavat. And so, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, because Siddha Pranali, what does that mean? Siddha means perfect, Pranali means line or flow. Our perfect lineage is not that of bodies. It is not a list of names that we put on a piece of paper and then present out to someone. Our Siddha Pranali is the speaking of Bhagavatam throughout history. This is the true, and this is the highest Siddha Pranali. Again, this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, essence over form. And this is the central point of what this text is saying. One can fake external things. One can, like so many people speaking these Bhagavat Saptahas, don't get me wrong, many of them are pure devotees, but so many aren't. They do it for money, for fame, and they might tear up at the mention of such higher pastimes that they rush into. They might apparently, the great actors that they are, have their hairs go on end and manifest all the other sattvika bhavas that are mentioned here, the 8 transcendental symptoms. But such things are externalities only, because their hearts are still steel-framed. They have not had the internal transformation. The true symptom of devotional service is if one's heart is changed. It is the seeking of the essence. That is the essence of the Yukta Vairagya of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami was one of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta. And at the time of Bhaktisiddhanta's pastimes, he was in charge of the Delhi Gauriya Math. And he wrote a letter, it's included in Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, if I remember correctly, to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's other disciples was in the jungle chanting, and that was his main form of preaching. He was chanting many rounds. And he wrote a letter to, and Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj wrote a letter to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur saying, is it offensive if I ask this god brother of mine to come assist me in the preaching in the Delhi Gauriya Math, which we have just established, because I need help in preaching? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, forget about it being offensive. If you were to do such a thing, if you were to ask your god brother to assist you in the preaching of the Sankirtan movement, you would be his greatest well-wisher. He would have no greater friend in the world than you. I do not consider the counting of beads to be Krishnanushilanam. We know that from the famous text defining what pure bhakti is, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadyanavritam. I do not consider the counting of beads to be such pure devotional service. The essence, however, can be found in the dynamic preaching, the dynamic kirtan of the Sankirtan movement, of the which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur so much embodied. This is the essential form of Krishna Seva. And so, this defines then devotional service. We cannot hide. We cannot hide under externalities. There are, Sachinandan Swami will often point out this. He saw in some temples, some small temples in Vrindavan, you can put some coins into a machine and it has some incense on it. And when you put the coin inside, the machine will make a small offering to a deity. And so Sachinandan Swami asks, is that an offering that is pleasing to Krishna? Is that bhakti that is happening there? People go, as we know, for all sorts of mundane reasons, and they'll give some money to this machine, and this mechanical pujari will go. Krishna does not need necessarily that incense. It is not necessary. It is not some magic trick that if you wave an incense somewhere, Krishna will be pleased. It is not a magic trick. Sometimes people with all desires to eat the food will prepare bhoga and then offer it to, present it towards Krishna, chant a few mantras, and then say magically prasadam. Bhakti is not a magic trick. It is not a few magical spells that we can cast on our sense gratification and then say, now this is pure. It is not that these manifestations are magic tricks which say, now I am on the platform of bhava. There is no hiding sincerity. There is no hiding away from our lack of qualification, from our lack of sincerity, from our heart on the path of devotional service. Until and unless we can properly engage internal transformations, until and unless we can sincerely do these things, there is no cheating. There is no magic trick. Bhakti, the heart, which is melted in love for Krishna, that is pleasing to Krishna, not magic tricks. And there is no beating around the bush. There is no running away. And this is what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has so powerfully emphasized in his preaching. And that is the heart of what we must do. I had a few other things, but I've gone over time again. I'll wrap up now. So we see. So this is again what is being had here. If we do not have internal change, everything else can be lost. Everything else is worthless. Everything else is just a show. And how many people do it for a show? How many times does the pratishtasha, the desire for name or fame, creep in? His Holiness Dhanudhar Swami says once when he was living in Vrindavan, he is still living in Vrindavan very often, and he was speaking to a very, very elevated sadhu, and a young devotee ran up to this sadhu and he said with great pride, "Sadhu, today I have chanted over 64 rounds." And the sadhu very simply, and the sadhu was also chanting many 64 rounds, and the sadhu said to him, "Thank you very much." And the young boy looked at him confused and he said, "Oh, why are you thanking me?" And the sadhu said, "By sacrificing your own spiritual progress, you have allowed me to gain some humility." It is not this pride, this desire to flaunt externalities. He has made the point that by chanting with this desire to show off, it has become only an external affair and has become empty. There has been no spiritual heart to it. But this humility, which we read about here, which Mahaprabhu so embodied in Godavari, this humility, this is the essence of a softened heart. This pastime happened just before the famous Rai Ramananda Samvad, the Eho Bahya, Age Kohoar, this is external, the honing in on the essence of all Vedic knowledge. When Mahaprabhu met Ramananda Roy on Godavari, he manifested all of these symptoms, but in order to hide them away from unqualified people. This is how much they should be hidden away, not put out forth on TV or in front of large crowds of people in order to increase one's name, fame, and glories, but instead should be hidden away in front of unqualified people. These Brahmins were described as Vedic, bound under the Vedic injunctions. But after this happened, because of course I was going to explain the pastime, but I don't have time, and Srila Prabhupada anyways beautifully elaborates on the essence of it anyways in the purport. After that, in the embrace of Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Rai, Ramananda Rai, he says, he speaks very humbly and he's crying, and Mahaprabhu hides away his features, and then he says, "Oh, how wonderful that you are such a pure devotee that you can make a Mayavadi sannyasi who is a non-devotee like me, you can make him feel such great things." This is the humility of Mahaprabhu, and this shows the actual symptom of bhav, as Srila Prabhupada mentions here, the mana shunyata. Pridelessness. What is pridelessness? Pridelessness is having no pride in spite of one's factual superiority. If one is actually in a superior position and does not realize it, then one is at mana shunyata. It is not that a pathetic person realizing his pathetic state is to be considered mana shunyata. He's considered close, but he's not quite there. This is what bhava is. This is the true essence of spiritual progress. And that is why we hear Mahaprabhu not manifesting these things in his Shikshashtakam. Instead he prays, Nayangala dashrudharaya vadanam gadgada rudhaya gira palakaya nichitam vapu gada tava nama grahane bhavishyati. He prays for his voice to choke up, for tears to fill his eyes, and for his hairs to stand on end. Even though he has that bhava, he is praying for it, praying for it, praying for it. In humility, he is praying for it. The pure devotee prays for bhava in his humility, even though he has it. He does not flaunt it around as the people who take these things so cheaply and distribute them out so freely do. So then, this is the essence of this verse. We should feel ourselves low and unqualified to hear such things. And if we truly cultivate such a mood genuinely, then hopefully our heart may be softened and we may be able to enter into those higher realities which are the end goal of our spiritual practice. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.